Hello, everyone, and welcome to the DCUSoccer Podcast. We're back for this season. Last season ended with a show titled something like "At Least It's Over." So, I guess at least we're back, right? But I have a special guest with me today. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Well, hi there. My name is Dan Wise, and I am first-time guest here, but a long-time listener. And yeah, been making the rounds lately on a couple different shows, and I'm real glad to be here now. So I am S Dakota Soccer on Twitter and on Instagram, and I run a newsletter called Soccer Made Simple. So, anyone who is sort of curious about getting into the sport and sort of, wanting to understand it on, kind of a lot of levels from like the, sort of rules of the game to the cultural impact and, maybe the business side of it. I try to cover a whole range of stuff, but with a pretty, easygoing, approachable kind of style. And that's something I kind of wanted to start doing because, gosh, when I started getting into soccer a little over 10 years ago, there wasn't a whole lot in terms of resources online. You could go to Wikipedia and look up some stuff, but trawling through articles on articles about tournament formats and stuff like that is not the easiest thing to do in the world. So yeah, I put together a newsletter and been doing that. So yeah, that's just been so much fun, and yeah, super happy to be here.
Yeah, totally. I think you mentioned some of the shows you were on. Most recently, we were on a show together. Do you want to give them a little shout out at the top of the show?
Yeah, so District Football Podcast, Juan Herrera, he's been having us on, and he's been really great. One of the central guys who, with you as well, who has really helped me connect with DC United, sort of like the community at large, which is crucial these days because I did sort of have kind of a major life change where I spent 10 years in the district and then just recently moved back to my hometown in South Dakota. So, yeah, having you guys sort of here and doing these shows has been great, and I'm super gracious that you'd have me on. So this is super fun.
Yeah, totally. I think I always have a good time with Juan, and we've been on it a couple times, and I think it's a really great show, and I like going on there. So wanted to, since you brought it up, just give them a shout out. But yeah, so we have, I mean, it's my first show in a long time here, but there's too much to go over since my last one, so we'll go over kind of what's been happening this week. There's a new player coach rumor today actually, and it seemed to progress pretty fast. Did you want to kind of give an overview there? Because I have a lot of thoughts about this one.
Yeah, I don't even. I think it's past the rumor stage. As far as Stephen Goff reported, the paperwork is pretty much being done. So we got Gonzalo. No, we got Federico Higuain, who is yeah, coming in from the Columbus Crew, and I can understand why you feel very mixed feelings about this. But really, I mean, if you kind of look at the past couple of years with DC United and some of the signings they've made, they're signings where people are kind of like, "What are you doing?" And then they've gone on to really impact the club and I think the community in a very positive way. Mainly with Quincy Amaraqua and then Felipe Martins, um, two guys, who definitely got in people's heads, and the same thing can be said about Higuain. This is a incredibly uh, interesting call. It sort of, yeah, it really kind of blew, yeah, you and me away seeing this in development. But just kind of a short breakdown. 35 years old, brother of his, more probably more famous counterpart, Gonzalo. But he has put in a lot of work with the Columbus Crew, been a stalwart for them until he had an ACL injury, and around, I think, what was that, around May. And so
Yeah, pretty
technically
early.
he's still recovering from that. So he's still out for about another 6 weeks. I think it was said that he's going to have to kind of be training with the club. But the interesting wrinkle about this is that he's coming on as a player slash assistant manager, which is super interesting. And so he's so far, kind of a divisive figure here. The DC United crowd is very much like, why are they doing this? And then, but at the same time, you've got a lot of Columbus people really lamenting this. He has ingratiated himself to that community so deeply over the past few years, and some people are really missing him. What are your thoughts on this?
Oh man, I mean, I think to me the thing that struck the most was the coach part. We had heard reports about DC wanting to look for an assistant coach. Potentially, I think some of the rumors were that it'd be more like a tactical mind to maybe balance out some of the other the coaching staff's strengths, but and that not really happening yet. And I'm wondering if this is part of that. I mean, it seems like it could be. I know, obviously he was at Columbus, played under Greg Berhalter, who kind of has like him or not, a reputation for having a more quote unquote tactical view of the game and understanding the game in those ways, which I think is really interesting. So I think, I think it's really, really interesting the fact that he would be coming in and being part of the assistant coaching group. I think right now that opens up a lot of questions, right? It's like, okay, well, is he an assistant coach, super sub, not the captain when he comes on, maybe because he's part of I don't know, right? Like, kind of cool, but is this a way to get him under, like, not have to spend too much money on him, give him a coach's salary, right? I don't know, right? But
I made a joke. I think this was a couple years ago, back when I think we had Acosta come in, Leo Hara come in, and really it's been showing that DC United has taken a lot of interest in Argentina. So I made this passing comment that, like, I love what they're doing. It's like, it's kind of like we're becoming like Boca Juniors Junior here. And with Higuain, we have, he's Argentinian, and so bringing him on as a coach, as someone who has probably very tight links with that country. Is this a long-term thing? I know you said, is this something where, like, yes, it can work a deal where, yes, they're paying a fraction of what he was contracted in Columbus mega. He went from 1.1 million down to 100,000. Although that's having also a coach's salary tacked on there, so could be anywhere from 50 to 150,000. Who knows? Extra on there. So yeah, you could see it as sort of a shrewd business move. But is there a longer term view here with just how much interest that DC United has taken into Argentina?
Right. Yeah, well, right. And I think one thing that makes me feel like it is not kind of that, relatively sketchy, situation is that, obviously his brother is I guess at one point was like a superstar, right? Like even in that top tier. So like, I'm assuming they have agents, they've talked about it, right? So I don't think it's, just some guy who was a little bit good at another team, right? So I don't
Gonzalo,
think,
I think he was big with Napoli, I want to say. and there were links with him going to Arsenal. I think back around sort of like the Alexis Sanchez era. His name was being linked with the biggest clubs in Europe. So yeah, the Higuains are definitely big names. In sort of like the soccer world.
Yeah. So that makes me feel like, they've done their due diligence on this, and it's seems like, it might be the case that Federico is, wants his next step to be coaching, and I guess as another DC United player, Wayne Rooney has kind of done in Derby, like it's a great first step, right? Like so that could be really, really cool.
That's we can probably get to that later, but if I would love to know your thoughts, especially with the question that was posed with a potential friendly between Derby County and DC United sometime in October. But we can go off into that later in the show, sort of when we kind of do some housekeeping and whatnot. But yeah, anything else you want? Like I'm a little confused because yes, Federico was a guy I always feared and respected in that way. Whenever DC United faced off against Columbus, he was a guy I always had my eye on. Like, what is Higuain doing? Great. Gosh, he can be a number 10. He can be a number 8. He is a really well-rounded midfielder who just has a fantastic mind for the game. Can really pick out passes. Just it's sort of on that Andrea Pirlo kind of wavelength where, not maybe the most, technically gifted player, but he's got such a mind and ability to pick out passes and set up plays that he does have just that little special something that even if we're getting a 35-year-old who in certain terms is kind of a boomer in the soccer world, is a guy who just has a pristine mind for the game. So I think that is what DC United is sort of banking on in this situation.
Yeah, totally. I mean, he definitely played, I think, incredibly well as a number 10 there in Columbus for so many years. I remember, I don't know if, God, I remember when this was, but I guess when Greg Berhalter was first taking over the U.S. men's national team, one of the questions that I remember that was asked of him was like, well, there's no one in the the U.S. pool who can really play number 10 like Federico and Columbus can. Like, how do you feel about like how are you going to address that, right? So it's like it kind of goes to show his level there. Even at his age of 35, at that time probably 33, but still whatever,
Mm-hmm.
Pretty good. Yeah, I think like you mentioned, he's not ready immediately. Needs 6 weeks to probably run on a treadmill at least, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited about it. I mean, I think the nature of it is more exciting to me than the fact that it's a Columbus player. I mean,
Right.
I'm not too big of a fan of Columbus, but he's not my least favorite player on Columbus. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know if you remember, but yeah, some people were saying that he taunted DC United last year. Do you remember what that was all about? I may have completely missed that. I think that is what is kind of setting off some supporters about this move.
Yeah, I mean, but the thing is, well, I remember, when I was at that, to me, this goes back longer than last year, so I don't know.
Right.
But I remember the 2018, I think that, yeah, that playoff game that we lost.
Oh God, yes, yep.
Yeah,
He was a monster
being
that game.
Well, yeah, he was amazing, but he was kind of taunting us on that side. We were chirping at Pedro Santos and him and
Yep.
so there was that whole thing, and then yeah. the DC supporters have long taunted him on the field. It seems like not even
Right.
necessarily. I don't think it's a guy like God. I'm trying to think like I don't know. There's some guys in the league that everyone just really hates, and like we are really hate. Like I don't think it's a Felipe level necessarily, right? But it is definitely a guy who's like has taunted us. We've taunted him.
Mm-hmm.
But I find it interesting that he is not doing this in Columbus. I'm very interested by that as
Right.
well, considering he was there for so long. And I mean, club legend, I guess, right? I don't know.
Yep. Yep.
Um, Weird.
It's baffling. So it completely caught me off guard. Yeah, and that's the other thing is like it's another midfield signing, which um, with the loss of Paul Arriola is really that was really a crushing blow for the team. So he is definitely a much I would say needed and well uh, sought after player for us. You were sort of saying, what is he? Is he a super sub? Is he a captain? When he gets subbed on, I think he's definitely a rotational player, particularly if players are heading off on international duty. I want to say like probably Edison Flores when he gets called up for Peru. I think Flores is definitely going to get that number 10 spot, and then Higuain will be the guy to sort of step in when he's needed. And yeah, that's totally great. And I think with the type of play we're going to have on the wings, I think from Gressel and Assad, having a guy who can sort of control that middle where that's the thing about him. We're not looking for a guy who's going to torch players. We need a guy who is going to utilize the weapons that we have on the wings, and then with Ola Kamara up top at the number 9. So that is a crucial thing we'll need, especially with Flores. If at any moment we don't have him on the field, Higuain is a solid pickup in that regard. I don't think he's much of a loss in terms of what we need on the field if we do if we don't have Flores in certain situations. So yeah, it's a fantastic move. I think it's shrewd, and this is showing some great initiative from the front office.
Yeah, totally. I think even if you go back and look at some of those games, I remember just the positions he would put himself in, the spacing is, and I think that's part of that tactical mind too, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
he had that before he went to Columbus, but probably grew alongside of Berhalter and his methodologies. But the one last thing that I wanted to mention as well before we don't spend literally 20 minutes on this, but
Right.
the only one thing is he did, like you mentioned, he had that ACL tear. And that is something that Areola just went through. So
Yep.
that is something that I think might be an interesting thing where like he can kind of not necessarily mentor, because I don't think it's a that needs that much thought, but it is an interesting thing where he could be like, oh, I did this, I did that, whatever, but
Oh,
yeah.
but what do you think with Yao, Paredes, and who's our third wonder kid in the midfield? Neiman. I having those three with a guy like Higuain who can really foster. Those guys are
Yeah, that's
showing that
true.
they're going to be ballers in a few years. So we're having someone who can really like foster the growth of their minds. That is a huge plus.
Yeah, especially Nyman. I think he's kind of more of an 8, but
Mm-hmm.
similar-ish. And like you mentioned before too, Higuain has played a little farther back, especially as he's aged a little bit.
Right.
But yeah, it seems like a really good opportunity. You could also see him be one of those Loudon guys as well, maybe. But yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's huge. So then moving on, do we want to talk about the preseason finish against Philly? Sort of a nice exclamation point, I think, after a really challenging preseason where we did lose Areola and then we had some tough defeats against Montreal and New York Red Bulls, and then a 1-1 draw against Nashville, and then sort of a 1-0 win against Louisville. How'd you feel after that game, seeing the team sort of, what we're going to see as far as the starting 11 goes this season?
Yeah, I mean, I felt pretty positive. I mean, it's hard to really take those win or loss to, whatever. But yeah, I mean, I feel pretty good. I mean, even that starting 11 there, you can kind of start to see some slight differences on how they're starting to play formationally and how they're shifting, I think. But I don't want to read too much into it, right? But I feel pretty positive, I gotta say.
Yeah. What we saw was a midfield that, like you said, really was comfortable shifting on attack, really getting aggressive in that attacking third, and moving really well as a unit. I thought they, I don't say this as a pejorative, but they played some solid Benny ball that day. Really playing that stout defense and then moving the ball really aggressively up the field. And I think we got a good look at how those wings are going to really feed into the box and really make some runs and also set up some really good passes. I feel so confident about this team now. How about you?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think Gressel is. I think he's gonna be really, really good this year. I kind of was, not iffy. I was always really happy with having him, but I was like, well, he's probably not gonna be as good as last year, But I'm starting to get really positive on him too, especially because he'll probably play more, especially with Areola out, right? But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm super impressed with him, honestly, and I think that honestly, Segura, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I thought he was pretty good last year, but it seems like he every year he takes like a half step up, right? So we're starting to see him really, really grow into himself and kind of be the player we all had been wishing he was for so long.
Mm-hmm. I think getting the caps for Costa Rica has done a lot for his confidence, and I think he's a player who's gonna find himself, I think, really well this year. Last year was a really tough spot for him. I don't know if you remember. There was that game. I want to say, was it like against Cincy or something like that? It was when it was post like the injuries that we had to Mora and a couple other spots of injuries that we had to deal with. But we kind of grilled Flow FC because they they kind of leaked the starting lineup online ahead of time. And they weren't leaking the starting lineup. They were doing an interview with Segura, and they were listing him as a forward. And we were all grilling them like, he's a midfielder. What are you doing calling him a forward? And then we found out that day that Ben had actually put him at the number 9, and we were like, what is going on? He's a guy who really selflessly plugged himself in wherever Ben wanted him. And that's a crucial kind of sort of utility man to have. So you kind of hope that, at a certain point he's going to find that role he's going to define himself with. And the same thing that's going to have to happen with Russell Canouse. He's going to have to own that right back position and really do something with that. Or left back. Is he left back or right back this year?
Right. Canouse will be right.
Yeah. So, Segura will have to find that way that he'll get plugged in and just do his job. So it's going to be interesting to see how he develops this year.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there was a lot of weird stuff last year, and we didn't have too many goals at all. But a lot of the open play ones, if you go back, you can actually see a lot of those open play goals were involving Segura, and I thought, I think he's been pretty underrated. I don't think he is like a, amazing high level TAM guy, but I think,
No.
he's in the top 50% of people at his position in the league, I think, right?
Yeah.
And so I think we could see a really good year from him. Honestly, like a really really solid year, which would make things without Areola a little less painful, even if it's temporarily, if he really you know steps up.
And especially
You know.
especially early with Assad still nursing that groin injury. I have him listed as starting against Colorado this weekend, but unless that's not going to happen, Segura will have to be that guy to really shore up that wing and you know kind of figure it out, and he seemed to do that really well against Philly. So I feel really good about him taking on that sort of midfield wing position. So, super super excited. It's going to be a long season for sure. DC has to figure out a lot of things because last year, with all the theoretical firepower that we were the fourth worst scoring team in the league. And so those numbers need to be drastically improved, and the midfield is going to have to figure that out. And especially with Ola Kamara up at top, he's going to have a lot of weight on his shoulders. So I'm excited but cautious at the same time. How are you feeling about all that?
Yeah, totally. I can definitely see Segura playing a big part, and definitely being a starter, probably for the season opener. One prediction I do have, not to get too silly too early, but is I think we're going to see a lot more substitutions and a lot earlier this year than we did last year, which, to be honest, is not. I feel like that almost no matter what happens, it'll probably be true because the substitutions were pretty infrequent and really late last year. So,
Yeah.
but I think we're gonna see that be a lot different. So I can see, like, having Segura start and then bringing Yamil in for the last 30 minutes instead of 2 minutes, right?
That was
um,
there was a if gosh, you have to wonder because working in DC for 10 years, you get very used to that, doing a hell of a lot with very very little in terms of personnel and resources. So credit to that team last year, who gosh, through the thickest of it, like really banded together, and I think that was a trial by fire that really unified that midfield. And so I think this year, after all of that, I think they're going to really light it up. And I'm excited about that. I don't think we're going to have the season we had last year where we're limping into the playoffs after, losing home field advantage because we, kind
uh,
of, kind of, I want to keep it PG, but after we really lost our heads against Cincinnati in that final game last year, so that is tough, and this team is primed, I think. But they're going to go against a hungry Colorado Rapids. So do you want to sort of go into next week's game?
Yeah, totally. I'm really excited about it. First of all, I'm gonna be there. I'm probably gonna be at there's a live recording of the RFK Refugees podcast.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
so I'm gonna try to go to that. We'll see. It's kind of an early. It's an early game. It's at like 1, so it's like
Yep.
I like the early games, but it's like you can't pregame too early, right? Because right.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
I think there's a fundamental difference about how we view pre-games here.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess I could, right? But I mean, so I guess we'll just see. I mean, I really want to go see that though. I think that'll be a cool experience, and I'm really excited for them and kind of our community to start having these kind of events in general. But that'll be really cool, just in terms of like game stuff. And it seems like the earlier the games, the more likely there is like after game stuff as well. And that's always something that I really, really like to do. Just talking about like the community and like meeting new
Mm-hmm.
people is one of the, obviously I feel like one of the more fun parts of soccer in general, no matter if it's your local team or your favorite team, or you go over to Europe to see whatever it is, right? Like that's always
Yeah.
one of the fun things. So I'm really, really excited about that early game. Yeah, Colorado Rapids. A lot of people in like the media sphere have been talking about them being good this year, which sounds, potentially crazy, but I mean, I don't know. Have you been hearing that?
I have been hearing that, and there have been people who are saying that DC United is not going to be good this year. Losing Paul
Yeah.
Areola, I think a lot of people view that as, losing a national team guy and really a guy who's sort of a heart and soul of that midfield. That is really rough, and I think so. We're so intimately involved with the team. We can name who we've got, but with some people, even then, they're like, yeah, Edison Flores is a baller, but like, is he actually going to do that for the team? Who's Yamil Assad? And yes, Gressel was very solid as Rookie of the Year and winning a championship, but he was with an absolutely stacked Atlanta United. What's this team going to do? So it's very interesting. And with Colorado, you have a team that lost a lot of dead weight.
Yes.
Don't want to sort of forsake the name of Tim Howard. He's a legend, but the guy was very much, he was a burden on the pocketbooks, and sort of he lost some of his ability. He's not your early aught or early 2010s Tim Howard, which is even a shadow of his Manchester United and Everton days. So it's interesting. They have a new coach who is a former player for them, very much a fan favorite. They offloaded Anthony Hudson, who really kind of took a decent squad and kind of ran them into the ground. So this is a team. They made the playoffs back in 2016. That was the last time, and so that they're hungry. They want to feast again. So having such a down year last year, especially losing to New Mexico United in the fourth round of the Open Cup,
Yeah, I
this
remember
is a
that.
team that wants to prove something. So warning to DC United, and then you don't have to necessarily warn them; they know what's going on. But this team is going to be coming in hungry. This is not going to be a step over, a glorified training match. This is going to be a real deal season opener. So Colorado is going to give them a match, and I'm very excited to see what happens. As far as your uh, take on the 2020 Colorado Rapids, who are you sort of most afraid of looking at the squad that they have now?
Geez, no one. Honestly,
No,
well, they have a couple new faces, right? With that Tim Howard money, like you said, coming off, I think that's a huge deal.
they picked up
Um,
Eunice Namley, who is going to be a really solid number 10 for them.
right,
And so
right,
that's their DP, and he's gonna have a whole load of work on his shoulders.
right. Yeah. So with that, I guess we'll just keep calling it Tim Howard money. They were able to
Right.
pull him in. I think they were able to upgrade like a little bit at a couple spots, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a combination of the non-fearing of the guys from last year and the
Mm-hmm.
unknowns of some of the newer faces, but I'm kind of scared more so not about the individuals, but more about that stuff that you were talking about. Like, yeah, they had a terrible season. They have some new faces, new leadership. They do, yeah, have that dead weight gone, right?
Another
Um,
interesting thing is that they are also doing a very not MLS kind of formation. A lot of teams have really adopted that 4-2-3-1 setup. This team is taking a very aggressive, very narrow 4-3-3, where you're going to have Nomley taking up that number 10 role. You're going to have Acosta and Price backing him up. And they're going to be, so you're going to have Price playing sort of like that holding midfielder where Benazet and Nicholson, they're going to be playing those deep wings. And then they're going to be feeding the ball to Kamara. Kamara is a huge pickup for them. So,
Goal scorer,
yeah. So full stop. This team's going to be dangerous, and they're going to be given a look that not a lot of teams are going to be real familiar with taking on. So, kind of excited to see that. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, especially with, Kai Kamara's kind of getting up there, but one of the top goal scorers in the league's history, right? So that's always something to keep an eye on. I think definitely underrated. But one of the interesting pieces there is Kellen Acosta, who kind of fallen out from a lot of stuff, I guess, but also the national team situation, and I think kind of some of his other hopes. So you could find yourself thinking about him wanting to prove himself and actually get his stuff together, I guess I'll say, right? So, yeah, I mean,
if especially he's gonna be sort of like that drifting number 8, who's gonna kind of be where he wants to be in that formation, that can be really dangerous. If you're sort of defensive midfielders or backline aren't paying attention, I think he has sort of carte blanche on making runs into the box. So that is something really dangerous to look out for with Kellen Acosta.
Yeah, talented player, kind of lost his way, but that kind of thing can snap back on in at any time, right? I mean, one of the storylines in CCL right now has been Pity Martinez kind of snapping on, right? Like we saw him have a hell of a game yesterday. I think it was yesterday, but and he's out there talking about himself in third person, saying, Pity's back, all this stuff, and I'm like, oh no, like. This is not good, right?
Zlatan has ruined the league.
Yeah,
his attitude has been adopted. That is, boy, that's something.
Yeah, so I was like, oh no, we're gonna have to deal with this because Pity didn't do too well last year, I think. But seeing him in CCL, so like those kind of things can just snap on and at any time, and these off seasons, time for reflection. But I think that's, as an organization, that's where they are. I also have to say I think their colors look terrible. I don't know.
Really?
Yeah. Oh my God, they're just like. They feel, to me, it feels like there was an okay color there, not good, but okay color there, and then it went through the wash 30 times. I don't know, like it's just not good to me. But
it's that classic West Ham look, Ham and Aston Villa.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm a sucker for it. What can I say? It's I don't know how I feel about sort of like the pattern of it with sort of like the light and dark sort of alternates of the sort of shades of claret there, but there's certainly worse looks in the league. I want to say the San Diego probably has the worst jersey in the league this year, easily.
I'm thinking Toronto with those gray. I think they have those like gray weird ones, and it looks. I think it's Toronto. Someone has a weird gray one, and that looks terrible. But
yeah, Adidas is gonna Adidas. That's something we just have to get used to, I guess.
I really like ours though. Like I really like our jerseys, to be honest.
I would not be as hot on it if it weren't for the red shorts.
Fair.
Those really like tie that together, and gosh, who was it saying it? Having a conversation with someone that we are the black and red. Why is it over the past couple of years like our jerseys have just been black? you know,
With a little bit of white or gray, right? Yeah.
It's jarring, when we're talking about the black and red. We gotta see some more pops of color coming in there. But that'll that's all sort of side dressing and all of that. But sort of shifting back to that opener. What are your predictions, and what are your sort of keys to the game for DC United to take control of that match and pull out it like a decisive win against Colorado?
Yeah. I think, some of the keys are, I mean, both teams are coming in, haven't played a real match yet, so there's going to be that kind of stuff. I think, last year we came out, I felt like we played very well in our last season opener, even though, it was raining and miserable for everyone, including myself. But um, it's the basics, right? It's completing passes, not,
Yeah.
making those mistakes that you make all too often when you're coming back for your first couple games, knocking that rust off as soon as possible. Hopefully they're fit, right? It's going to be, not like the weather's looking fine. Not going to be rainy or too muggy, I don't think. But
Right.
still, first game back. So I think it's those things, right? Like first game, be fit. First touch, good touch, right?
Yep.
And then I think the rest of it's going to come down to how they line up, and hopefully, I think most importantly is if these guys know, what their job is. If hopefully they know, hopefully there is a job for them to know what it is, right? But
Yeah.
that, I guess that's a higher level thing. But yeah, making sure these guys know where they need to be. Hopefully they know the system. It looks like it has adjusted a bit. Next evolution, not revolution, but evolution kind of. Um,
Hmm.
so those are the kind of things I'm thinking about. Nothing too crazy.
Yeah. This is a time when, like, really, you can't overthink it. Like you said, it's really the basics of the game. It's about not trying to do too much. We got a lot of players who I think are very technically gifted in that midfield. We got to see how they are mentally sound. I think that was a big problem for the team last year. Was you had just kind of a lot of destabilization going on, injuries, and then kind of like the turmoil that was happening between Luciano Acosta in the front office, and then just kind of the general Wayne Rooney problem, sort of really
Right.
checking out mentally in that back half of the summer. Uh, he was done at a certain point, and it was cute at first. I think when he had that, what was that red card against Toronto,
Uh,
and sort of had the mouthing off to the refs, and then talking about how MLS like handles its chartered flights because they were going basically cross country like back to back, and had some words about that. It was funny at first, but then when we all kind of realized, oh, he's like done. That was disheartening because that was all happening around August, which is such a crucial time when teams really need to tie it all together, and they just hadn't. And that's where we sort of, had that kind of sputtering out against Cincinnati at the end, and then really just getting annihilated by Toronto in that playoff game. Uh,
yeah.
we were not a team deserving of that position, I think. As That's kind of brutal to say, but really, somehow we got through by the skin of their teeth, and you know, all credit to the team for that. But boy, they overachieved surprisingly because they did do so poorly in that back end of the season.
Yeah, and I remember them having a decent lead at one point, but then
Hmm.
kind of just giving it up and being like, okay, so here's where we are, right? Yeah, I kind of been feeling like we're gonna start out a little slow this season. I'm kind of hoping not to lose this first game, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where my mind is. I'm thinking like a 1-1 or 2-2 kind of game, honestly. Maybe
Hmm.
not 2-2 because our defense was really solid last year and seems to be equally so. So that's kind of my thoughts.
Like you said, stay fit, keep it basic, get a win or so. Or, at least if we can walk out having had a beer shower or two, that's what the fans want. And so if they can deliver that, then really the sky's the limit for this team. Like you were saying, slow start. Hey, that's fine. I'd rather have a slow start that sort of gets the kinks worked out early rather than a real hot start where it has
Yeah.
everyone thinking, oh my God, this team is gonna, first round bye, home field advantage in the playoffs. This team is gonna light it up, and then we didn't. It was really jarring seeing that. So if this is a team that can kind of build steam from a grain of sand, uh, DJ Shadow reference there. I can sort of see this team doing well, and I think they have the tools. They have the necessary, personnel. They're a little thin as far as the backups go, but I I like you've been saying, sort of for the past couple of weeks, surprisingly optimistic about everything. So we'll just have to see how these first, games roll out for this team.
Yeah, I just don't want to see too many overreactions. I mean, I know it'll happen, but I think that those first 5 to 10 games, I think, coming out with 2 wins, 2 draws, and a loss would be really, really, really good, I think, honestly. Um, which sounds maybe obvious, but like I could definitely see us not winning any of them as well, right? But
Yeah. Well, you know who the X factor was? It was Bill Hamid. He put in an MVP season last
yeah,
year.
for sure.
And without him, yeah, I think DC would have missed the playoffs. So that's another factor. It sucks to say it, and but he's a guy who's in that position. He eats this kind of pressure up, but it's going to be on him to just play perfectly and really just rack up those clean sheets this year. If he can do that, then this team can really rally, and I'll be excited to see what they can do, especially against the big boy clubs, your NYCFC, LAFC, Sounders, and all of that. Like I can see them being up there. Like I said, Ola Kamara, he can be a top five scorer if he takes the support that he has in the midfield and capitalizes on every single ball that comes his way. He can do it. Easier said than done, but he's also been talking confidently. I think he too was going with the third person, like, Ola, something where
Yeah,
it's
Ola's
like,
here now.
Ola's here now. Feed me the ball. I'm gonna do this. I'm like, okay, all right. Then let's do it. Let's show that Ferrari that these Fiats can do a little something. Then I
Right.
like it. So, but
Yeah.
the onus is on them to really deliver, and I hope Kamara does that. I hope the whole team does it.
Yeah, that topic brings me into one of the final things. Just a couple prediction questions that I have here. Um, so you'll have to think on your feet.
Okay,
But my first one is, who do you think's the highest goal scorer on the team will be?
Kamara.
Yeah, definitely. That one was probably the easier one. I definitely agree with that. I think honestly, if Areolas didn't tear his ACL, I think he could be up there too. A lot of the
Yeah,
time last year, he was just missing his chances, which was frustrating.
yeah.
But he could definitely be up there. I mean, still, I would say Kamara, but that would be my competition. I
Also,
can also see
I'll
Flores,
even
but
take it a step. I'll even take it a step further. I'll say 15 or 16.
oh, for sure. Yeah, well, okay. So, do you think? Okay. I would say more than that. I'm thinking
Okay,
like first 20 goal season for Ola Kamara here. Like
okay.
I'm really feeling it because I mean even in that I mean this is not how math works, but in 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 his 5 games last year, he scored 3,
Yep,
and I think he can do better than that. But even
for
that
sure.
is amazing, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. I could see him really, really doing well. He's a natural goal scorer in this league, no matter
Hmm.
where he's played, right? So I hope we don't overhype it and then he scores 10, but I can definitely see him crushing it. Okay,
I'm
so oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm even gonna take it a step further. I think I want to say that we're gonna have double-digit assists from at least one of our midfielders. I think Flores and Gressel are probably the main candidates to you know go 12, 13 assists or something this
Yeah,
year
that was my next question.
easily. Yeah.
Who has the most
Uh,
assists?
who has it? I want to um, my mind would say Flores. The dude's a baller. I think when you're talking about Benny Ball, the way he likes to kind of build the ball up, narrowly through the pitch, I think the a lot of the legwork, absolutely pun intended, is going to fall on Flores to really uh, deliver in that end. Big money signing as far as this club's concerned, and just a huge community signing for them as well. And I'm looking for him to really do some special stuff this season.
Yeah, definitely. I am gonna say Gressel. I think between Flores and Gressel, you have, to me, it's kind of not a toss-up, but as close as you can get. Um, the thing that I will say though is I think Flores will have more goals than Gressel, but I think
Yeah.
Gressel will have more assists. That's kind of how I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if this actually becomes a discussion or a race at any point, I will be happy with that too. So, um,
Yeah.
yeah.
So let's go even further here. How many clean sheets did we get this year?
Oh, so how many did we have? We had a decent amount.
We had a really decent amount. That is a fact I don't have off the top of my head at the moment. Um,
It was
you
something
you
like 14, right? Or something
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 like
like
that.
that, right? Like it
15. I want
was.
I want to say it was 15. 15 I think is the number I remember. It was
I'll say.
ridiculous.
I say we don't get to that again. I think that's gonna be pretty hard, right?
Really?
Yeah, I don't know, right? Because I mean that's a lot, right? That was what our that was like a record or something.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like I'm not sure. uh, That's rare.
Right. That's rare,
Yeah.
but this is a team that can do it. Maybe we don't hit 15, but I would be comfortable saying 13, 14, somewhere around there. I don't think it's going to be too. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be too far less than how they did last year. All returning guys, and Hamid, who is, I think, hungrier than ever. A guy who's getting constantly. God, for a guy who put up so many good numbers last year, just getting constantly snubbed for national team placement, for just general recognition in the league. If he does it again this year, he's got to be MVP. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I mean, definitely goalkeeper of the year. I think. Geez, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's just so hard to do that. I don't know, right? I think the thing is if we do that and our attack is as much better as we think it will be, I think we're MLS Cup bound. I mean, right? Like
You'd
that,
want, yeah, that's so easy to say, right?
right?
Yeah. Uh,
If they're both like, because that, you know, yeah,
it's going to be a tough season. Yeah, when we go against those big teams, that is going to be the barometer that we can really judge this team against. How do we do against LAFC, LA Galaxy, How are we going to do against the West Coast? Because the West Coast is so monstrously stacked lately that, like, how are they going to measure up against those teams? If they measure up well, then you could very much say, like, okay, then they can probably handle making an MLS Cup run. If not, then okay, then we're going to have to dial back expectations this year. So really looking forward to those. That's my main thing that I'm looking at. But at the same time, they can't do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, they have to really take it one game at a time and just keep it solid and just go each individual game and just try to do the best they can against whoever they're facing.
Yeah, totally. That Western Conference is looking quite nice there. So last year we had 50 points. Do you
Yep.
think we have more or less this year?
More, but not by much.
I feel the same way. I've
I
got
would
us like
say
52, right? Like,
I would say 54, 55. That would be a healthy upgrade for me as far as this team goes.
yeah. I think if we spread the losses out a little more instead of them
Yeah.
all being in a row, that'll be nice, right?
Right, right.
Um,
Soccer is a game of flow. If you can hit the heat, at the right times, that's what really matters. So I hope this team, like, you know, they grind out the games they need to, but if they can hit their hot streaks, that's going to be really, really important for them.
right, right. Cool. So that's all for my predictions. Do you have any other things you want to talk about before we start our wrapping up conversations?
Yeah, so sort of staying on the prediction section of things and sort of alluding to what I was talking about earlier. Planned derby with Derby County, or not planned derby, but planned
Yeah,
friendly against Derby County. Wayne Rooney coming back.
yeah,
I have very mixed feelings about this. In one hand, yes, he was a big part in sort of grabbing this team by the scruff of the neck and dragging them into the playoffs that first year he was there. But the second year was such a drastic turnaround in the opposite direction, where he mentally checked out. A guy who even the years watching him in Europe just was a solid leader on the field, completely lost his mind. He was always talking about how he loved America because it wasn't the sort of press circus that was over in Europe. Yet somehow the press was able to find him over here. Although, is that more the press was able to find him here, or did he put himself in bad situations and sort of put a lot of the turmoil on himself. This guy who really, when everyone was saying, kind of bemoaning DC United for being, MLS 2.0 instead of doing what Atlanta was doing, the MLS 3.0, they were like, why are we getting this washed up, Euro player? I'm like, well, guy who is a solid field general, I don't want his technical ability. I want his football mind. And he actually did bring a lot of technical ability. But the way he just kind of turned his back at the end, especially where he at the beginning was saying, "I'm gonna come here and I'm doing my job here. I'm gonna prove, you can talk all you want about me, am I still good about or is still good, for the Premier League. I'm here in MLS and I'm here in DC. I'm gonna be here in DC." And I'm like, great, this is exactly what we needed to hear. But then when you get right down to it, that was just media training. That is a guy who just knows the game so well on that end. And then just feeling like I have to say I feel a little bit hurt after him leaving and just kind of leaving the club the way he did is not great. And people are like, well, this guy gave you two of the greatest memories in MLS history, and he took you to the playoffs, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, okay, yeah, but fourth worst scoring team in 2019 with Wayne Rooney on the field. That's inexcusable. And a lot of that blame shifts onto him because he had to deliver, and he absolutely did not. So, a lot of people saying, him coming to DC, would we cheer for him? I personally wouldn't. I'd be dead silent. I think that it left a real bad taste in my mouth. And what are your kind of closing thoughts on that?
yeah. I mean, I remember when it was announced, and it was just that like crushing. I don't know, just crushing. I just remember feeling like, well, it's all over, even though I knew logically it wasn't, right? Like I knew in a year what we wouldn't care as much, right? As all things in life typically tend to be. But yeah, that hurt. And the way it happened really hurt. And the way that he let the team get into the state it was really hurt. It's hard to sit back and judge too hard, specifically about some of the incidents in terms of being out, taking other people on the team out, being in pictures, that whole
Yeah.
those whole things, that's a distraction in and of itself, right? Like you get someone in trouble with their wife and they're not going to play the same for the next couple games, right?
Which
Like,
he absolutely did. And boy,
yeah,
I don't think, I think Briant just kind of wanted to just have a night to, you know, kind of deal with kind of a bad loss and just kind of blow off some steam. But I think he got put in a bad situation he really didn't want to be in. And boy, I felt for him. I felt real bad. And man, yeah, you don't do that to your team. That's just, yeah. So, I have to say, I'm glad he's gone. And now we have a team that really today seems so much more put together emotionally. And with Rooney gone, I couldn't be happier about it. So I guess
yeah.
that's closing the chapter on the Rooney saga right there.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, when someone tweeted about this, I think it was the district football Twitter. I think I replied what you just said. I said I'll just be silent. It's okay.
Yeah.
Because it really is conflicting, right? I think honestly, I feel like a lot of the best two moments, stuff. I think that's recency bias at some, a
Yeah.
little bit, right? I mean, again, like a lot of things in life, something that just happened to you is gonna stick in your head more than something that happened, 5, 10 years ago. But there will be another moment like that.
For sure.
There will be better moments than that, hopefully. And there were better moments than that before this. And there were sadder moments than Rooney leaving the team.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm glad. Honestly, I'm glad he is. I do feel like him obviously reaching out and being like, "Hey, let's set up this friendly." I feel good that he did that because I mean, certainly he did that, right? I mean, I don't think that seemed to.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's nice, right? Like that is, he's still like a club ambassador. I don't know if he's paid for it, but he is marked as a club ambassador, so that's good. I hope that those things continue. The first time seeing it back will be hard, but I think it's an overall positive. I will probably, honestly, I won't even stay silent. I probably just won't go, to be quite honest.
Gotcha.
But
Yeah.
it's emotionally hard. Not even that I'm mad, but I don't know. Maybe the next one, maybe the next friendly, Rooney.
Right. Yeah. It's weird, but yeah. If you want to wrap it up and get on to the housekeeping, yeah. Let's go
Yeah.
on.
So the last thing I messaged you about this a little earlier was
Mm-hmm.
I want to do each of us to do one soccer related thing um, that we would recommend to the audience to see if a couple people want to check someone else's stuff out that you find interesting or whatever. So do you want to go first?
How about you? Because you had a really good podcast and then I think a book recommendation.
Yes. Well, actually, yeah. So to get us started, I'll do two for the first week because I have literally on my list like 15 things. Um, so the first thing is I wanted to give a shout out to the District Football Podcast. I think, we've both been on there. I think it's a really good podcast. I really like Juan. I really like their Twitter page. They have a Twitter page. You can go find that on Twitter. And obviously their podcast on any, you're listening to this podcast, so you can find podcasts. So
Yeah.
definitely go check that out. Me and Daniel have both been on that, so it's cool. The other thing that I wanted to shout out is a book that I bought relatively recently, I guess. It's really, really good. I think, and something that I think if you work or if you maintain relationships with other humans, it is useful. And it's called Soccer Thinking for Management Success, Lessons for Organizations from the World's Game. It sounds kind of like a corporate-y, management book, but really it has, thoughts and advice and, things you can learn from if you let it, for literally everything, for, being an employee, being an employer, being a manager, being a director, being, working on a podcast. I don't know, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Or maintaining relationships with, your spouse, friends, whatever. You can learn something in this book, and it's related in a way for people who understand soccer or maybe are just getting into soccer as well, because there's a lot of explanations for stuff as well, which I found was really nice, to make it more accessible. But it is really good, and I would recommend it for a lot of people, regardless of what they do in life or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, that's excellent. For mine, as far as a podcast and sort of general resource goes, MLS Aces is a fantastic show, and I was on a show with one of the hosts the other day, Sam Nelson. I was with him on the DC United Kingdom show. So James and I, we just kind of just chopped it up for a while, and he's a fantastic guy, really interesting. Kind of a DMV area guy, lives in Baltimore right now, but he worked at RFK Stadium, and he brews his own beer. But anyways,
Oh,
like
wow.
the MLS Aces show was started by a guy, Tom Sweezy, who has like the best name I've ever heard. Really got into soccer around 2014 when the whole, one team, one dream, I believe we would win, sort of fever really took over this country that summer. He really got into it, so he got his friend Sam and Jason Vivang to come in and talk about a show that really covers the MLS at large. But what's great about it is that it's a bunch of guys who are kind of figuring it out as they go, which I really love. Tom really, all he knew was kind of what he was going off of playing FIFA. And so then he was just like, well, I'm going to learn about MLS and I'm just going to follow it real in depth. And so there's a really good approachability with the show. So it's really just a couple of guys just, really having a fun conversation, drinking beers, talking soccer. They are a really wonderful show. So yeah, special shout out to, Uncle Sam Nelson, really good guy. So if you go to, Twitter, MLS Aces, all one word, you can pretty much find everyone's Twitter link to that, as well as, where how to find them on iTunes or Google Play. And then, and then I guess, kind of ancillary to that, shout out to James in DC United Kingdom. I love what he's doing. Sort of
Absolutely, yeah.
bringing this team over to the UK, and he's a wonderful guy, and he's got a child on the way. So whenever that happens, if he listens to this, James, wishing you the best with that. As far as like my book pick, this is a pretty well-known book in sort of like the general soccer circle, but Inverting the Pyramid by Jonathan Wilson is, sort of like the preeminent authority on sort of like how the game started out in the UK and then like has really evolved over the years, sort of in the player personnel, the tactics, how coaches think about the game, and then how it's all wrapped into the wider culture and business of the game and how that has all sort of come to be, in this modern age. Just that's a book that has really helped me understand where soccer has been, and it's helped me appreciate, sort of a lot of, sort of that classic like 70s soccer or 80s,
Yeah,
especially
right.
with
Yeah.
like Johan Cruyff, the Dutch bomber who came in and really sort of reinvented the game. When you're talking about guys like Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp these days, who really play that high pressing style, but a really fluid style at the same time. That is where a lot of that comes from. When you talk about how Barcelona became so dominant in the sort of early to mid 2010s, and how Spain was so dominant. A lot of how the theory of building that homegrown support helped take teams to like that extra level, and where Barcelona already being really good to almost becoming a deity in soccer. So with La Masia and their sort of junior academy is a lot of what this book is about how these teams really built up their soccer culture in with everything else. So yeah, Inverting the Pyramid, Jonathan Wilson, really good book, solid stuff. Love his writing style. It's so conversational and fluid and just real easy to get along with. Yeah, just a fantastic book overall. So that's that.
Wow, that's yeah, that's a really good recommendation there. Both of those things. I'm looking on Amazon, Inverting the Pyramids, literally $3, so no one has any excuses not
Yep.
to buy that. Yeah, cool. So just some closing out things. I wanted to say, like, if you enjoy the show, go check it out and rate it on iTunes or whatever you're using. We're gonna be back soon after this opening game. We'll see how things are. But yeah, it's good to be back. I feel like we're gonna have a good season, DC, on this podcast, and that last little section there is something I'm really excited about.
Yeah.
Getting multiple things out there for people to check out, even if it's only a couple people. Like, I find that really interesting, building that community, building like it's just good to get exposure to different things in general, but to help support some of the creators in our community
Yeah.
is always good. So yeah, I also want to say thanks, Daniel, for being here. Can you tell everyone again where they could find you so they can follow you or social media you?
Yeah. Thanks again for having me. Had a really good time with this. Yeah, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. It's S Dakota Soccer. So it's a lot of soccer with a whole lot of old, oh yeah, don't you know, type of folksiness coming in there. So really, really excited to get involved with a show like yours, but also doing my own thing with the Soccer Made Simple newsletter. It's tinyletter.com/soccer made simple. You can also, you can subscribe and check out the archive that I've got on there. I'm actually, sort of working on getting it into a podcast format now, and I'll have more information about that as I get there. But yeah, doing that. And then if you want to check out sort of like the articles I've written, you can go to my website. It's danielofdc.com, and you can go to the main navigation and look for Soccer Made Simple, and you can see the whole archive of articles that I've written there. So fun little project I've been doing. And yeah, again, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I've really enjoyed being on other shows that you've been on. I mean, that's happened, I think, at least 3 times now. So
Something like that, yeah.
yeah, and so I'm really excited again, like I said, about this year with this podcast, all the stuff that you're doing with your newsletter, which you need to keep updating. I keep telling you.
Yep,
Um,
yep, yep.
but yeah, I mean, I think that's all for this week. I think we gave a good overview. Maybe I mean, there was so much stuff since last season, so I think we were pretty fair on time actually, because we could have gone on for 6 hours. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think that's all for the DCU Soccer Podcast, and I'll see you all next time.
Peace out.